we recording?
Yes, we are.
Fantastic. Welcome everybody. Nice to have you here today.
Good morning. Good morning. So, our talk today is about unnecessary, unnecessary suffering. And we're going to begin with an opening spiritual mind treatment. We call it an affirmative prayer. And I'm not reading one today of Ernest Holmes. I decided to do one ourselves. Shall we do it together?
Well, yeah, we'll work on it together.
Okay.
We'll see what
All
happens.
right. So, we close our eyes, we go within and know the truth of our being, which is that all of us are spiritual beings. We are spiritual beings having a physical experience, and the truth of our being is that we are one with the divine.
There's nothing in us that isn't perfect and organized in such a perfect fashion as to allow us to have the perfect life that we have come here to live. And so we know this to be true.
And we know that the perfect life includes challenges, it includes growth opportunities that we sometimes label as painful and hard, and that's what we came here for. So we know that we do experience ups and downs in our emotional being. And the truth as we know it always liberates us to know that we are divine and infinite beings who live forever in a multitude of experiences and dimensions. And it is all for the richness of this thing that we call life, is the truth of our being.
Knowing this, feeling this, and allowing ourselves to reach deep inside of it, we say thank you for the opportunity to be ecstatic around this life that we are living and for this life we are living. We know this to be so, and together we say,
So
and
it
so it
is.
is.
Thank you. I kind of surprised you with that, didn't I? I said I would do the opening prayer and then invited him to join
Sure,
me.
I didn't give it the 3 hours it takes to practice the 10 words I'm going to use, right?
So our title today is Unnecessary Suffering because we were going to talk about imagination. And the title that I had was, Are you using your imagination or is it using you? Or is it having its
Which
way
is a
with you?
good title.
Or is it having its way with you? Because often we let it run amok and have its way with us. And I realized that, when we watch TV and even listen to the radio, we form images in our head. And they're images not of what we're seeing. If we didn't have a television, if we didn't have a radio, and I were to look around and tell you what's going on in life, I wouldn't see any COVID. I wouldn't see any unhappy people. I wouldn't see demonstrations. I wouldn't see fighting going on between people. It all looks very peaceful around here. And so I thought, well, isn't it interesting that we allow the input, the pictures we get on TV in our head from listening to the radio, tell us what's going on and what we need to do, often to protect ourselves because they scare us.
Mhm.
And then I thought, but we do that all the time because we can use this powerful thing, this powerful picture maker in our brain to create pictures that empower us or scare us to death. And we get hooked with those scary ones. Um, we get hooked with what we need to do to protect ourselves. Oh my God, what if? Well, I better do this, this, and this to plan and protect self. And all of that just makes us miserable. And this picture maker, because you can't think a thought without it creating a picture. And so we often stress, change your thinking and you change your life or learn to think positively. But basically, the powerhouse with that is that because the way you think is going to be making pictures, and that's going to uh, embolden you and make you happy, or it's going to scare you.
Well, and we think in pictures. We often think that thinking is in words or in paragraphs or in statements, but actually, a lot of our thinking is in images that we see. But a piece of that too, I want to go back to an experience we had a while back when we were looking at heart math and the ability to connect your heart to your consciousness in a more profound and perfect way. And so the image that I held in my mind was my dog licking my face because it's such a sweet thing. and my pulse went down. And I've done the same thing with my blood pressure. And I've been able to drop blood pressure by 10 to 15 points in less than 5 minutes by simply imagining something that feels good or that I love or that I like. Why that's important is that the mental images that we have create the chemistry that is required to live in the world that we've been imagining. And so, if you would, it's not just your imagination that you're dealing with, it's the images that are creating the physical being that you are. So, it wouldn't be unusual then for you to see something that's really negative, have negative images about it, and then walk around feeling frenetic and uncomfortable and, in these times wanting to go to the refrigerator and eat something that isn't good for you, or have a drink or do something to get away from what you don't even realize is connected to the mental image you have. So what I want to emphasize is the importance of visualizing a world you want to live in, visualizing the good things, visualizing the positive things as often as you can, has a huge impact on the physical system. In fact, it doesn't just have an impact, it literally changes it. And
Exactly. And we were talking about movies that we had seen that illustrated this
oh
point
yeah,
beautifully, and we had to go look up the titles. Do you want to tell them about?
sure. Well, the first one, which I love, is called Jacob the Liar. And Jacob happens to be in a concentration camp. It doesn't happen, he's in a concentration camp. And this is a Polish concentration camp. And he happens to,
During World War II.
during World War II, yeah. And well, I don't think we had one before that.
Don't think we have any now.
No, we may. But he was trying to steal some potatoes from near the commandant's office, and he overheard radio about the Russians and where they were in relationship to the camp. So he went back to the barracks and immediately told everybody. And what he realized when he did
And where
that,
were they in relationship to the
well,
camp?
they were getting closer.
Okay, you hadn't said
So
that.
yeah, I knew that. You should know that. You're following the story. And so he went back and told all the
And they
people.
were going to rescue them.
Yes,
Right.
Judith. Why don't you just do the whole talk?
Okay.
I was afraid of that. Why you be careful what you ask for. So anyway, they were uplifted and encouraged. So then he had a great idea. The great idea was that he would tell people that he was regularly listening to a radio that was giving progress reports, even though he didn't have a radio. It went so far in the movie as eventually the Nazis start raiding the barracks as trying to find the radio because they've already heard about all the optimism. But even more important than that, one of the relatives, close relatives of his, uh, is really, really sick and begins to heal. She begins to get better. People stop killing themselves. And so here we are in a concentration camp with an idea that things are going to get better and it's transformational. And that's the message, is that just having the image in your head, having the hopefulness can be huge and transforming.
So I'll tell about the next one.
Yeah,
That one
I'm
was
going to interrupt on a regular basis. Okay, so you know,
okay. That one, that Jacob the Liar was made in 1970 something.
1974. Yeah, I have all
1974.
that information right in front of me.
So it you may not have seen it, or you I don't know. You can find wonderful things when you just type them into
Yeah,
Netflix these
you
days.
you type in uh, concentration camp movie radio,
Radio.
and eventually I got to it. Yeah.
So the other movie that we loved is called Life is Beautiful. When was that made, Bob?
I'm not going to 1997. Right.
1997, so 23 years ago, and it was an Academy Award winner, and it's an Italian movie. It's an Italian movie. It was about an Italian Jewish family that they end up getting rounded up and put into a camp in Rome, I believe.
What year?
1997, the movie was made.
Okay.
And it was a father and a little boy. He had a
Yeah.
little boy with him. I think the mother was sent elsewhere. So because they were male,
Mhm.
the father and little boy stayed together. And the boy is young. He's 5 or 6 years old. And so the father is determined for him not to have a horror experience. And so he makes up stories about what's going on and that this is all a big adventure. And they're going to the little boy's going to get to ride on one of those tanks that he sees going by all the time. And it's going to be great. And he keeps saying, when do I get to ride on the tank? And he just makes up this make-believe world. And somehow he manages to convince his son that life is beautiful and all is well, even while they're really in the midst of a camp. And the end of the movie, I can't tell them the end of the movie, can I now?
No,
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 that
please
would
don't do
ruin it
that.
for you if you look at it, because it is a really sweet,
Yeah.
beautiful movie.
An Academy Award winning
But
movie.
yes, but the same thing is that all he needed to do is put another picture in his son's head for him not to be terrified of where they were and what was going to happen.
And we believe the pictures that we create, often even more than the actual evidence that's out there. And so what we need obviously to do is to be willing to have or to hold an image of a future that works rather than one that doesn't.
Exactly. And the movie does have a happy ending, by the way. I
Very,
should tell you
yeah.
that.
And it includes a tank.
And we're trying so hard to stay away from politics today, although we can't help but be really encouraged and happy with the speech last night that President-elect Joe Biden gave, because it was that it was planting pictures of cooperation and love and understanding. You know, he said that we understand, we fully understand that half of the country is very disappointed right now, or not quite half, but almost half, and we understand that disappointment. That Joe Biden says is because I've lost a couple of times myself, and so that understanding and that welcoming into unity was such. For us, it felt like, this is America again. You know, this is inclusion. This is caring.
Mhm.
This is unification. He called it, this is the end of the era of demonization. So we
So,
were pleased with that.
so I think even if, and I mean, if I were not in favor of who won, I probably would be sitting back thinking, it's not true. He doesn't really mean it. It's not true.
Mhm.
It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah, that happens.
But I think what I would invite all of us to do is to hold an idea and an image of this coming true, even if it doesn't look like it can, or even if it isn't even as sincere as I believe it is. Because often when you support an idea, however superficial it may be, that idea begins to develop roots. If it has roots already, that's wonderful. And if it doesn't, let's help it get roots. What I learned a long time ago working with animals is you don't reprimand a dog or a cat or an animal for doing the wrong thing. You wait and catch them doing the right thing and you support it. And whenever they're doing whatever you want to see more of, you encourage it. And the more you encourage it, they figure out the better it is for them and the more easily they are able to do it. We need to look at every single positive thing that's going on around us that we can see and say yes to it and encourage it rather than to be suspicious of it or try to find a way around to the back of it where it doesn't seem so good. And it'll be easy for us to do. It's easy for anybody to do, to say, well, you said that, but in 1962 at a talk that you did, you didn't say that. Is that helpful? And does it encourage us to develop the roots we need for the future we want to have?
Exactly. And I have noticed that when I speak with people and relatives who were had the opposite political um,
Affiliation.
affiliation, is what I found is that when they would try to reassure me about things I wasn't happy about, they would say, "Well, you know, that's not true. What you believe is not true." And when they and I would think the same thing about them. What they believe is not true. So we have a hard time coming together when we're saying what you believe is not true. But we must understand that what they believe is making pictures in their head, and it's certainly real for them. So we just have to know the truth. We have to know the truth, and that we are evolving, our country is evolving, the world is evolving. We need to come together. We need to know the important things that we're here to do and strive for. And I believe that's love and cooperation with our planet, and making this a world that works for everyone.
Mhm.
That's our organization's vision statement: a world that works for everyone. So, and we do this with our thinking and our knowing. I know whenever I find myself feeling miserable, if I can just be still, whether that's lying down and listening to a guided meditation, or sitting in my chair and meditating, or picking up a spiritual book, being reminded of the truth that what's really true for me is that I'm a spiritual being, eternal being, connected with God. And that in that sense, all is well in the world. All is well, despite the appearances, bes- despite the ups and downs, despite the illnesses and conflicts. Really, at the core of my being, I'm well. I can't be hurt. I can't be in danger. Even if there's a pandemic, it doesn't have to touch me. And even if I got it, it doesn't mean the end of the world. So uh, that's how we can avoid unnecessary suffering.
Hmm.
Because if our mind is undisciplined, if we allow ourselves to go with our fears and go with that river, it can take you into a very deep ocean
And drown you.
and drown you.
So if we're talking about unnecessary suffering, then what is unnecessary is the projection of our worst fears out into our
Yeah.
life, and then attempting to validate that fear that we have by finding information that supports it. In many ways, it's like taking the band-aid off of a wound and then digging at the wound to see how deep it is. And the more
Mhm,
you dig at
mhm.
it, the deeper it gets, and also the more likely it is to get infected. What we really don't want to do is to infect our thinking. We don't want to infect our thinking with the negativity that will that will erode our ability to see the future as something worth living. Now, where that seems to be a rub for some people, and that I talk to, is they'll say, "Well, you're not being very realistic." And when they say being realistic, what they mean is that they've set the parameters for what reality is, and have asked me to create my understanding of life around those parameters. And that takes me to something we talked about earlier, which is imagination. It's something that I realized about imagination too. Very often when people say, imagine now that we create something wonderful, what we don't realize is behind the scenes of the imaginer is often, well, first off, people don't get along together. And then it's going to be these people that can't be included and these things that can't be included. Now let me think within that small box. Our imagination isn't the problem. The parameters we set for our imagination often limit our ability to come up with something that is going
Mm,
to work.
mhm.
One of the things that I've discovered, and we were on the internet yesterday looking at the Google plant,
The Google
uh,
home office
home,
in
yeah,
Silicon Valley.
right, and the Apple place as well. The huge, both are huge. The emphasis is on creating space for people to let go of anything that makes any sense at all, and to be nonsensical, to be
Right.
whimsical, to be
Whimsical,
fun.
playful.
Yeah, and but haven't you noticed often for yourself when you have had something really bothering you and you've walked away from it or gotten distracted by something, all of a sudden in the middle of whatever you're doing, there's an aha, a realization that says, "Oh, I never thought of that." Well, you didn't because you were headed down a particular road that you were paving ahead of you. And while you're doing the business of paving the road ahead of you, you're not looking around to see what's possible. And so, one thing you can say right now that is really helpful is I don't have enough information to make a judgment. I don't have enough information to be determined that I'm right or that I'm wrong. Let me keep the inquiry going. If we could have our consciousness be in an affirming state of inquiry rather than, well, I've got this much figured out. Now, what can I add to it? What we're often doing then is adding to the story that we've made up that isn't necessarily true. So, what's really, really helpful is to say, I don't know. And I remember when I was first going to college, the professors would drive me crazy because they would say, well, that's what we know right now. And I would say, what do you mean right now? Isn't that what we know permanently? And they, no, 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 no. Up until now, that's all we know. And so what I discovered was that awakening took place in that space of inquiry, not in the space of conclusion. And it's a tough space to be in, that space of inquiry, because it doesn't have any solid things you can grab onto and say for sure, well, actually, there is something solid we can grab onto and say for sure, we're a spiritual being having a physical experience. And in that context, we're safe. We don't have to be in constant fear that something terrible is going to happen to us, because nothing terrible enough can happen to us to take away that we're spiritual beings. That's not destructible. And that's a really important piece to realize. I'm indestructible at the core of who I really am.
I remember when we saw that, and you can see it too. You can go on YouTube and put in Google's um, office or
Office
headquarters
tour,
in
I think it is.
yeah, office tour in
Actually sent an
Silicon Valley.
application in after Judith did that. Yeah.
But most of their employees, and they have thousands of employees, but most of their employees are young people who are doing programming, and they want them to innovate and come up with new things. And so they make it very playful. You can walk downstairs or you can go down a slide. They have a big, long, winding slide that people can go down. The food is free, and that you can have a selection of all the food you want. They've even got a shower because they want to encourage people to stay late if they want to and work on projects. They have cartoon figures and Star Wars little sections that people can sit and chat and cooperate and collaborate. And I just thought, wouldn't it be wonderful if all of our offices were this way, that encourage that kind of imagination and playfulness?
We see what the behind the scenes message is, that if we free you up to create, you'll be productive. I could not help but move that to nursing homes and places where people that are older and infirmed go, where what is expected of them is not that they will innovate or that they will create or that they will bring forth something that has value. What's expected is they won't get any worse, or if they do, it won't be as painful as it would if they were on their own. Wow, I thought, wouldn't it be something if we had retirement centers for innovation? If retirement
Right.
centers were places where people that were older,
Wisdom centers.
wisdom centers where people could go, and the mission was not to get their meals served to them in a cafeteria or to have the wheelchair available. The mission was, after the food and the wheelchair has been provided, what creative wisdom do you want to share? And I think, we don't have mission driven aging. It seems as if we get to a certain point where the mission in aging is to simply see what else you have to put up with before it's over. And I see that all the time, but it was a wow. The most valuable part of our research for this talk for me was thinking, what if we could innovate creativity and imagination for the elders?
That would be fabulous. Instead of having them called skilled nursing centers, which is, it's just, that's the medical nomenclature now, skilled nursing facilities. What if they were creative wisdom centers?
And when I think about it, I think about, well, yeah, but you're talking about people that have disabilities. Well, when I talk to young people that are under 30 or under 30 years old, and I list 5 major events that have happened in the world that they have no knowledge of, I think they have a disability. And the disability is they lack history, they lack wisdom, they lack knowledge, they lack understanding. Yes, so actually they're in a disability center as well. We all are, but they're not working under disability, they're working under possibility. And what if all of us were in possibility centers, even in our own minds? What if we said, what are you doing today? I'm working in my possibility center. What does that mean? I'm creating my possibility, my future in my mind, and I'm actually seeing how I can make it happen. And I'm making it happen first in mind and in thought. And it's happening more and more and more. Wouldn't that be an adventure if we had that kind of consciousness rather than, so how are you doing today? Not all that bad.
Yeah. Because we really are creating more than our mood. We are creating our mood at the moment, but it's actually inviting through the law of attraction all that is necessary for people, places, things, ideas, resources to be attracted to us that would not come to us if we weren't holding that image in our mind. So these images are powerhouses that we're often, as I say, we're letting them abuse us instead of our using them for our good. I was thinking about when you're talking about letting go of the fear, you know, we spend our lives trying to let go of fear, and that's a good thing because it's a learned skill to be able to let that go. In the Course in Miracles, it defines love. Love is letting go of fear. Because when you let go of fear, fear is of the ego. Fear is the ego's business is to keep you alive here while you're on the planet. And so it's always looking for the lions and tigers and bears,
Oh my.
but that keeps you in fear. And if you can let that go, and then you actually feel and become and are the love of the creator. That's the truth of our universe, really, is love.
Mm-hmm.
And and so few of us allow ourselves to enjoy that love, or think we have to have a particular person, although I do like having a particular person to love me and be with me. The course actually talks about letting go of those. I can't remember the name for them now, but those special relationships. Yeah, they said, you don't need a special relationship. You need uh, love from and to all being beings. So that's how we can let go of unnecessary suffering. It's really important to do because often we're creating our own suffering by what we're letting in, the images we're letting in, sometimes from our media, and sometimes from ourselves, our own imaginings. So let's make our imaginations work for us and create necessary joy.
And I'm going to ask you to end with a treatment.
All right, I will. So join with me now, if you would. And let's know that the truth of our being is that we are eternal spiritual beings living in a place of love, in a place of joy, in a place of exploration, possibilities. And we know that the universe is for us and never against us. So we know that even in an election with a seeming division down the middle, 50-50, that everything that is occurring is for our highest good. We give thanks, we celebrate this, and we choose to use our images, to use our imagination to create a world that works for everyone. And so it is. So let me end the recording.